Hey everyone, and as I promised, I'm back with an update now that we have more confidence about our next big weather system. We're on the brink of seeing another major winter storm, and the data coming in now gives us enough to start talking about what could be heading our way. So let's dive in and break it all down step by step. Whenever we're dealing with a storm that's about a week away, it's smart to start with the big picture, the upper atmosphere. Everything with weather starts up high and works its way down to the surface. It's much easier to identify patterns and trends at that level than to try and pinpoint exactly what's going to happen on the ground this far out. That's why we're starting up top today, and let me tell you, it's already looking fascinating. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. Right now, we still have cold air spilling down from Canada into the eastern U.S., which has been the dominant pattern for a while now. But there's going to be a brief break in that over the next couple of days, and we'll talk more about what that means in a moment. Meanwhile, out west, those Santa Ana winds that have been whipping through California, driving fire concerns and creating dangerous conditions, are finally going to let up. By Thursday and Friday, a southwesterly flow will begin to move into California. This shift in the winds will help end the offshore flow, significantly reducing the fire risk in those areas. It's a welcome relief after what's been a very tense period for many communities there. Now, as we turn our attention back to the central and eastern U.S., there's a noticeable buckle forming in the jet stream. This buckle will allow some warmer air to push into the region temporarily. It's not a huge warm-up. Don't go breaking out the shorts, but it will be a noticeable shift from the bitter cold we've been dealing with. For those of you in places like Chicago, Houston, and the Ohio Valley, you can expect this milder air to move in over the weekend. The East Coast, including the Northeast, will get a taste of it by Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures are likely to run about 10 to 15 degrees above normal in many areas, which is going to feel like a nice little break. However, don't get too comfortable because this warm spell is going to be short-lived. By Saturday, things are going to take a sharp turn. A massive Arctic air mass will begin plunging southward, bringing temperatures far below average to states like Montana, North Dakota, and Minnesota. Overnight lows will dive into the 20s, and when you factor in the wind chill, it'll feel even colder. Think 30 to 40 in some areas. This bitter cold will continue pushing southward, reaching places like eastern Colorado, the Texas Panhandle, and Oklahoma. For those of you in Houston and Austin, you're not off the hook either. Early next week, the Arctic blast will make its way into southern Texas, bringing what will likely be the coldest air of the season for your region. And the craziest part, this Arctic air is going to stick around for quite a while. So what does all this mean for storm activity? Well, here's where things start to get really interesting. We've got a clipper system dropping down from Canada that will move across the Great Lakes, bring in lake effect and lake-enhanced snow to those areas. At the same time, a surge of moisture from Mexico will link up with this system, creating a broader storm system that will impact the southern and southeastern U.S. from Friday into Saturday. In Louisiana and Mississippi, we're looking at heavy rain and some thunderstorms. These aren't expected to be severe, but they'll still pack a punch in terms of rainfall. Further north, areas like Michigan, New York, and parts of New England could see accumulating snow. Meanwhile, the southeast will get soaking rains with a chance of flash flooding in parts of Georgia. The Arctic outbreak following the system is going to set the stage for a major winter storm early next week. When you have cold air this strong diving so far south, it inevitably interacts with Gulf moisture, and that's exactly what the models are showing. By Monday, January 20th, we're seeing signals for snow in Texas and Louisiana and even along the Gulf Coast. Yes, you heard that right. Snow could potentially fall in places like Galveston Beach, Houston, and even New Orleans. The ensemble models are showing some wild scenarios with snow possibly extending out over the Gulf of Mexico. For this to average out across multiple model runs, there's some serious potential for unusual wintry weather in the southern states. Now, let me be clear. It's still too early to pinpoint exactly who will see snow, sleet, or freezing rain. But the potential for wintry precipitation in the southern U.S. is definitely on the table, and we'll be refining those details as the storm gets closer. Looking at the probabilities right now, there's a 20 to 30% chance of seeing at least 3 inches of snow on the ground by January 23rd in parts of Texas and the Carolinas. The Weather Prediction Center is also highlighting the likelihood of winter precipitation across the southern states early next week. This Arctic outbreak is happening, and it's going to be intense. The biggest uncertainty lies in how the Gulf moisture interacts with the cold air, which will determine who gets snow, ice, or rain. If you've been following my updates, you'll know I've been watching how far south the snow could potentially reach. Yesterday, I pointed out that the models initially showed snow moving pretty far south, almost down into Texas. But as I've said before, I don't just rely on models alone. I always take into account what's happening in the atmosphere, and I wasn't totally convinced that the snow would get that far south. Well, I'm here to tell you that the models are starting to come around to my thinking, and we're seeing some important changes. Now, before we dive deeper into specifics, let me clarify one thing. Yes, there's still a chance for snow in some of the southern U.S., but not as far south as we initially thought. The models have backed off a little on that idea, and now it looks like areas like Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, northern Georgia, and the Carolinas are the most likely places to see snow. But keep in mind, we won't be looking at snow pushing into Texas or the deeper south, like some of the models were showing previously. In fact, if you remember from yesterday's video, I was already mentioning how I thought the snow was more likely to stay further north, and now the models are starting to reflect that. But that doesn't mean we're done with snow just yet. By the time we get to next Friday, over a week from now, we'll still be looking at the possibility of snow in the southern U.S., just not as widespread or as deep into the south as before. I'm talking about parts of Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, northern Georgia, and maybe even parts of the Carolinas seeing some snow. So if you're in those areas, it's still worth keeping an eye on the forecast because it's going to be an interesting couple of days. But snow isn't the only thing we need to focus on. We've also got some major systems that are going to affect the weather over the next few days. One of these systems is coming from the Pacific and will be moving across the southern U.S., bringing rain and moisture with it. The other system is coming down from Canada, bringing cold air. These two systems are going to combine and create a strong front that's going to work its way through the region over the weekend. This is going to bring a mix of rain and snow to different areas, with snow on the north side of the front and rain on the warmer southern side. So it's going to be a classic situation where we're watching two very different weather types on either side of the front. What's even more interesting is the cold air that's going to follow in the wake of this front. Right now, we've got some pretty cold temperatures sitting over Canada, and that Arctic air is going to start pushing south into the northern U.S. As we head into next week, we're going to see some of the coldest temperatures we've had so far this winter. But again, the models are now showing that this cold air won't be pushing as far south as originally thought. So while places like Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Northern Rockies will definitely feel the chill, it looks like the deep south won't experience as much of that Arctic air. For those of you in the Caribbean, this weather pattern is going to have an impact there as well. We've already seen some cooler temperatures in the Northern Caribbean, and we're going to see more of that as we move through the weekend. Right now, there's a front that's draped across the Northern Caribbean, and that's going to bring some cooler mornings to areas like Puerto Rico, Cuba, and the Bahamas. Along with the cooler air, we're also going to see some rain showers, but fortunately, the rain totals won't be that high. It's mostly going to be light, spotty showers, with the rain chance staying on the lower side for most of the region. If you're in Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, or other parts of the Southern Caribbean, the rain chances are going to be pretty low, around 10 to 20. So overall, it looks like we'll be in for some nice sunny weather in those areas. However, as we head into next week, we're going to see the pattern in the Caribbean stay active. The front that's currently draped across the Northern Caribbean will continue to move through, and by Tuesday, it's expected to reach the northern Bahamas, Cuba, and parts of the Gulf of Mexico. This is going to bring some rain to places like Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, but the Southern Caribbean, including Jamaica, won't see as much rain. The Northern Caribbean is going to see more frequent showers with rain chances running about 40 to 50 over the next few days. Let's shift our focus for a second to the seas. As these fronts move through, we're going to see an increase in wave heights, particularly in the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. By the end of the weekend, we'll be looking at some rough seas with wave heights reaching around 2 to 3 meters, about 7 to 9 feet in some spot. If you're planning on heading out to sea, be sure to check the marine forecast because conditions could be pretty choppy, especially in the Gulf and Atlantic. The seas will build as we head into Sunday, and by next week, we could see even higher waves, so it's going to be a bit of a rough stretch for anyone out on the water. Now, moving forward, the next few days are going to be pretty busy with two major winter storms to track. The first one will start moving through over the weekend, bringing rain and snow to the northern parts of the U.S., and then the second one is expected to develop next week. This second storm is going to bring some colder temperatures and possibly some snow further south into areas that haven't seen much snow this winter. This looks like it's going to be a pretty active time for winter weather, and I'll be keeping a close eye on all of the developments, so make sure to check back in for updates. So, That's the forecast update for today. I hope you've enjoyed the breakdown, and I'll be tracking these systems closely as they develop. There's a lot to watch, from snow in the southern U.S. to an active weather pattern in the Caribbean and even rough seas in the Gulf and Atlantic. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with all the latest weather news. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe, stay weather aware,